Hello, hello, good morning, and happy new year on this second day of 2025. I don't know how we even got to the 2020s, Ted, but here we are.
Numerically, I promise.
I figure it's numerically, but geez, no kidding what they say about, when you get older, the years just fly by. God, it's so true. You are tuned in.
Just you wait.
You are tuned in to the Ted Manila Information Show, or TMI for short, where we bring you too much information. I've been saying lately, because our conversations are just going off the rails, I think TMI now stands for too much insanity, Ted. And that's probably true for the world. I'm not even kidding. Like, if you thought 2024 was insanity, I would venture to say the gloves have just barely come off and we haven't seen the best of it yet.
There's a cartoonist colleague of mine, Pedro Molina. He has, cartoonists love to do their New Year's cartoons. It's usually the old man with the hourglass leaving with the old year, and then the baby comes on, right? Mm-hmm. And so Pedro did not do the following. Clay Bennett of the Chattanooga News Free Press did a cartoon, Free Press, where he's like the old man's leaving, and then the Trump baby is goose stepping into the scene. But Pedro Molina decided to not do that at all, and it's the scene from The Shining where Shelley, what's her name, is Duvall. Is cowering behind the bath.
Just passed away door. In 2024.
Right, she did, and after a very sad life. And the axe is coming through the door, and she's screaming, and the axe is labeled 2025.
Yes, that's probably the most accurate depiction. I need to go look up that picture from Molina. Okay, we got to look that up. But for those of you tuning in, if this is part of your New Year's resolution, good on you to have a brand new morning show to tune into. This is it, the TMI Show. We talk about anything from news, politics. Like I said, it might be like animal extinction, human extinction, the taboo, tattoos.
Oh, yeah, we can talk about tattoos. I'm against tattoos.
Yeah. You're against them?
Well, I mean, like for myself. I don't care what other people do. But I mean, I feel that there's no graphic image that's good enough for me to want to see it on my skin the rest of my life.
I have many, so...
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, well, you'll have to... but you don't have to. You could describe... When we do a tattoo show, I mean, I will ask you.
Well, yes. I have... I would love
I've designed tattoos for many people, and if you're watching and you want me to design your tattoo, I will do that.
Wow.
People have been very happy with my tattoos.
7 or 8? I don't know. We literally talk about anything on this show. Really, anything and everything goes.
Well, so I'm against people going into a tattoo parlor and picking up some generic tattoo out of a book. I feel like you should make the heart, more of an effort than that.
A heart that says "Mom."
That would be that's almost so retro that it's
cute,
funny and cool. Yeah.
Kind of cute.
It's so bad that it's good, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's kind of cute because for that reason, just because it is so classic that at this point it's become a classic, and it's kind of cool. So if you guys are looking for this straight-laced button-down show, this show is not for you. I'm going to warn you now, it's not safe for work because many of you have returned to work today on the 2nd of January, 2025. If you're watching at work, please turn down the volume because we do let the F-bombs drop here. So
not just F-bombs, S-bombs, everything.
Oh, just everything flies here. Just all the bad word bombs get flown here. So they get dropped all the time. So it is all the stuff that you already know you want to hear about, like headline news and all that stuff. And then some random stuff you never knew that you needed to know. And then, of course, we're going to laugh along the way. We are live. This is live every Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. So please be sure to like and follow the show. If you are on YouTube, please keep going. If you are watching and haven't hit that subscribe button, please hit the subscribe button. We are inching dangerously close to finally being monetized. I shouldn't say finally because
I wouldn't say that. I don't think we're close enough to say that.
We're like 100 subs off from subscription numbers. The viewing numbers will just kind of grow on their own, but we have a few.
The viewing numbers have been pretty good. It's the it's the subscriptions that we're lacking.
We need the subs. So please, if you are watching, it doesn't harm you any to subscribe. So, and it's free. And it will help us reach our milestones so we can become monetized and actually start earning a living from this. This is, I mean, we're still in it. This show's still in its infancy, Ted. I think we're only about a little over 2 months old at this point.
That's true.
So,
although, working for free for 2 months is kind of
I know.
a bummer. Yeah.
It's kind of painful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're hoping to be employed sooner or later, but we're also hoping that we can become our own bosses with this show, right? Because
True.
mainstream news is dead. Like, who wants to watch that anyway? And today's show, we are bringing in our old buddy Michael Maloof, who's a former senior Pentagon official, and amongst other things, Ted, people don't really know. Even I've known Maloof for like 10 years, and even I don't fully know exactly what his younger years looked like with like trading militaries and stuff in the Stan countries, and even after he left the Pentagon, going off to like jungle-y countries to train militaries or paramilitary, all kinds of stuff with guns and human tracking. I mean, he's literally like an expert human tracker.
So he hunts the most dangerous game of them all, man.
He hunts people. Like, he teaches these. Yeah. He's taught foreign militaries and stuff.
Does he hunt CEOs of major media corporations out of curiosity?
I don't know about nowadays, but maybe if this was like 30 years ago, probably could. I've been to the range with him. Let me just tell you.
Is he a good shot?
I mean, the dude can shoot blindfolded over the shoulder. I mean, just center mass every time.
Wow.
Every time. Just unreal. I would not want to be on the other end of his
rifle scope. Yeah.
Like, no matter how old he is, and it's comparable to Biden, 2 miles apart.
Wait, he's not that old.
Yeah, he is.
No,
he's a good friend of mine.
He looks way too good to be that old.
I know, but they are born in the same year.
What?
And and he's still all there,
Well, what year was Joe Biden born in? Oh, I think Biden's born in 46.
43? 40, yeah, something like that.
I mean, that's Joe Biden was born in 46. I mean, like, it's like that was like one of the biggest birth years in U.S. history, right? It was the beginning of the baby boom. Everyone came back from the war, and they were like, ba 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 ba.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. That's true. All right. So see, this show talks about everything. So, all right, we're going to get to the headline news. That's who our guest is later in the show. I have some theories that I expressed last night to Ted and producer Robbie, which you guys will hear about after this first headline. And maybe I'll present them to Maloof and get his take on it. But, I'm 2025. I'm coming in hot with my tinfoil hat.
With the conspiracy theories, yeah.
I'm putting on that tinfoil hat for 2025 because, like your friend's cartoon, 2025 is coming in with like a hatchet through the bathroom door.
It is. Some housekeeping, by the way. A little bragging. I'm in today's Wall Street Journal. If you're a subscriber, check out the op-ed page. I'm gonna read it. It's the subject. It's a paywall thing, so if you don't pay, don't bother to look. But although I think if you connect through Twitter, you can sometimes it'll let you read the story for free if you like find a link to the story, and then that's sort of, it works sometimes. It doesn't work other times. I can't figure that out. But it worked for me this morning. I don't even subscribe.
You don't subscribe?
I stopped subscribing because they weren't running me as often, and I got angry and so I just it's a little. I got petulant. It's not a cheap paper, I wasn't really reading it that much, although it is a really essential paper. Anyway, the point is I'm in today's Wall Street Journal. Yeah. So go check that out.
I subscribe.
It's about the reasons
maybe
that
I'll
some
get the
lefties
PDF
are
out there.
It's basically about how some progressives are not down on Trump and why.
All right, I'm going to read that today. All right, let's get to the headlines. Cue the Jaws. First Jaws of 2025.
Bum, 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 bum. Okay, at least 15 people have been killed and 30 injured after an attacker intentionally drove his pickup truck through a crowd on New Orleans' Bourbon Street during New Year's Eve festivities at 3:30 in the morning on, of course, January 1st, yesterday. Officials are describing the attack as terrorism. The driver was killed in a shootout with the police shortly after getting out of his car. Officials identified the suspect as 42-year-old Samsud Din Jabbar. As of this writing, details are still becoming available, though Jabbar was said to be flying an ISIS flag in the back of the truck during the attack. Subtle. According to reports, Jabbar, a U.S. Army vet and a U.S. citizen from Texas, was said to be outfitted in full military gear. He shot 2 first responders, both of whom are in stable condition. City officials said that barriers to protect attacks, they're called bollards, installed in 2017 along the street, were being replaced and had been removed in November. I can verify that. I was just on Bourbon Street Thanksgiving week, and in fact, I saw them working on it.
Yeah, I remember. Oh.
Federal officials had some, but not conclusive evidence that Jabbar may not have acted alone. While no evidence as of late Wednesday linked the two events, officials are also probing the explosion of that Cybertruck outside the Trump Hotel in Vegas that killed the driver and injured 7 more. In addition, the Sugar Bowl, featuring Notre Dame and Georgia, played in downtown New Orleans. I guess at that big dome, right? Was postponed following the New Year's Eve attack. The teams will play this afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern Time instead. There's a lot to break down there, and that will be, of course, our topic with Michael Maloof at the bottom of the hour. So we should probably save some of it for him. But
for sure.
But clearly, this for me, this story really reminded me of the 2009 Fort Hood attack by a also
19.
I think it was 2009. I think it's longer.
Really? That long ago?
I think it's been that long. And it was a guy who was a sergeant. He was self-radicalized. He was angry about the U.S. occupation of Afghanistan, and he was also Muslim, but self-radicalized U.S. military guy who went in and shot up his own army base. And
Wow.
And I mean, it's like it's also reminded me of this attack also by ISIS, self-radicalized, a guy who drove his car into bicyclists on the West Side Highway here in Lower Manhattan. And that happened a few years ago. There's been a number of these kinds of self-radicalized attacks. Garland, Texas, there was an ISIS attack on a right-wing cartoonist contest gathering all things. And two ISIS guys showed up in full AR-15 Charlie Hebdo mode, ready to kill as many people as they could.
Weren't they looking for Ann Coulter?
I don't know about that. They were definitely looking for like right-wing. Well, they were looking for anti-Muslim cartoonists.
I had heard they were looking for Ann Coulter because she was like the keynote speaker there or something.
Could be. She's skinny, so she would have been hard to hit. But they were, so that was that was something I took close note to, because after following that attack, I was put on an ISIS list myself. And so I ended up
because of your art.
Yeah, just for being a cartoonist. Literally, some dipshit ISIS guys online were like, "We should just kill all the cartoonists who are prominent American cartoonists."
Just all cartoonists.
Yeah. That was kind of like, I'm not a right winger. You're probably more in agreement with my take on U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. Like, I could work for your paper.
Weird.
Okay, like you should like me. Like, you should run my cartoons on your ISIS website and pay me. You shouldn't be. God. So yeah. Anyway, they're idiots. And anyway, fortunately, this was a right-wing gathering because they had hired armed security, and the guys were shot immediately upon arrival. If it had been liberals, it would have been a bloodbath. So
yeah.
So anyway.
So there's that. So I have a different. It's not even a take. It's not that I'm not married to my thoughts or opinions, but here it's just, I'll say it's my read thus far, right? It's just a read of things thus far, because I've been a reporter for the better part of 20 years. I have covered one too many cases of these, people that have been self-radicalized, and then later you find out, or any all kinds of stories where people have done horrible things and the FBI busts them or gets them or whatever. They always get their man. And you always find out later, like 2, 3, 5, 10 years later, that it was the FBI all along who either radicalized these people or honeypotted these people, or, would otherwise get these people. They wouldn't do these things without an FBI informant or somebody cajoling them to do these terrible things. I mean, this was definitely not the first time. I mean, you look at, like, as recently as the Gretchen Whitmer supposed attempted kidnapping, and you find out the dude is kind of mentally deficient, right? I think he had like a very, very low IQ that would otherwise qualify him for like a disability, right?
Or a spot in the U.S. or in a spot in the presidential cabinet.
Possibly. It's a flip of a coin. But this man that was supposedly the main kidnapper of Gretchen Whitmer was, he was mentally deficient, right? And you talk about all these different cases of that where the FBI, you find out later the FBI is involved. And I get it that this guy, who appears to be a Black Muslim American, so this is not a case of immigrants, first generation, second. He appears to be a Black Muslim. Think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, or Louis Farrakhan, or whatever. He's a Black American, African American Muslim,
Malcolm
born
X.
and raised. Yes, born and raised in Texas. Apparently, he's twice divorced, and they were both messy and horrible to him. Apparently, the ex-wives, and supposedly the last one in 2022 made him just snap, and he was, I guess, tens and tens of thousands of dollars in debt from legal fees, and his business was going, to hell, and all of this stuff. But because of that precisely goes to my tinfoil hat theory of who radicalized him. This to me makes him a prime candidate, somebody that's in a weak point in their lives, that's emotionally vulnerable.
Apparently he had been. I mean, to your point, apparently the federal authorities had been monitoring him, and they did believe that he might be up to something, and they were watching him. I guess you could say they weren't watching him closely enough, but yeah.
No, that's my point. Is they were, maybe they had something to do with it. I don't know.
It's true that it would not be the first time.
And what are the chances that he drove from Houston, where he lived, down to Bourbon Street? Bourbon and Canal is where it happened. And he happened to know that this is where the barriers are being worked on. I mean,
well, he may not have known that at all. It might have just been like luck.
Maybe it was dumb luck, but I have a lot of suspicion around what's happening here. So I'm not going to be quick to on my trigger finger.
You don't have to be on Bourbon Street. I mean, there's lots of places. I was just there. There's lots of places in the French Quarter that are always full of people, and you could do this anywhere. I mean, it's easy, as you and I texted yesterday. It's really hard to stop people from using cars as a weapon. It has happened before. It will happen again. Especially these giant like he had a Ford F-150 electric rental. That's apparently
tied. Well, I don't know if
from the same app as the rented Cybertruck that blew up in Vegas. By the way, just a side point. I'm not so convinced that batteries just blow up. Batteries are bad. My father's aeronautical engineer, and he used to always.
But that's not what caused the blow up.
He was against batteries. Well, we don't know what caused the blow. We don't know.
No, yes, we do.
What was it?
The guy had like these giant Chinese firework mortars in the back.
Yeah.
And all kinds of gas cans in the back.
So it looks intelligent.
And oils. It was intelligent. He blew himself up. He was in the driver's seat. He died. He's the guy that died. And that guy was also an early 40-something U.S. Army veteran, white dude. I don't remember his name. I think it was something like Linville or something similar. I think he's a white dude. I don't know, but the name sounded very Americana to me. I didn't take note because it just kind of flashed on the screen. They finally unveiled what his name was, but it was very Americana. So right now it's speculation that it could be coincidence that it was the same app.
Matthew Livelsberger sounds German to me.
Livelsberger, but American German then. Okay, I heard Linville or something. Okay. So it's, he sounds white-ish.
Yeah.
And he's around the same age as the New Orleans guy. So the same app. So,
so
he was also a U.S. Army veteran.
Yeah. I mean, you could see why there's a possibility of linkage.
There's a possibility, but there's nothing conclusive at this point. I just think a lot of this sounds really fishy because people are trying to link this. Obviously, that's going to be a message to Elon Musk and a message to Donald Trump. Like, you're showing up in a cyber truck to do jihad in front of the Trump Tower in Las Vegas.
Well, that's also, I mean, important point here is that I have this theory that when you die, you spend eternity dressed exactly the way you were when you died. And you look that way, but not like when you were blown up. You're like just before you were blown up. And I just wonder, in eternity, does this mean he has to drive that cyber truck? That like in the afterlife, that everyone's going to be like, yo, ugly. Like,
UT, ugly truck. Ugly truck.
Yeah. What's
Ted and I really think the cyber truck is really ugly.
Well, that's not an original thought. Lots of people think that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they have eyes.
Anyway.
Yeah.
What do you mean it has eyes?
They have eyes. In other words, people think it's ugly because they have eyes. Everybody who can see. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very ugly vehicle. And Ted made the correct joke last night that it was truckicide.
Yeah, the truck had committed vehicular suicide. He was like, I'm so ugly, I just can't live.
It was like, how does it roll up next to like a Lamborghini or something?
Oh God, that would be sad.
Like, what must it feel like? Because they all have AI now, right? So they have feelings.
They talk to each other.
They talk to each other and like, your lines are so much. Your curves are really nice.
You're so hot. Your
curves
pretty.
Are so nice. You're Italian.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you got the great accent.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, what's the best looking contemporary car besides something like that? I mean, it might be something like a Maserati, maybe.
But we're still talking Italian sports cars. True.
Yeah.
A Cybertruck is just, it's not cute.
Yeah.
Not cute. All right.
Well,
let's move on.
There is much else to discuss.
Yes.
All right. Here we go. Shock and dismay prevailed in Montenegro after a gunman fatally shot 12 people, including 2 kids in a western town, before offing himself. At least 4 others were wounded in the shooting rampage in Cetinja that followed a bar brawl. This was the second such incident in the town over the last 3 years. The shooter's been identified as 45-year-old Ako Martinovic. He killed the owner of the bar owner's kids, and his own family members. The attacker, who ran away after the rampage, was then later located, trapped, and surrounded by the cops. He died after shooting himself in the head. That, according to Interior Minister Danilo Saranovic. Residents of Cetinje were stunned and grief-stricken, obviously.
Ovich, by the way.
Yeah, it says. I hate these are words these are names that are hard for me to pronounce.
When you see the C with the thing, it's always an itch.
Yeah, all right. So Vanya Popovic, whose relatives are among the victims, said that we are all in shock. Officials said that the bar was at the brawl all day long with other guests. When the brawl broke out, he went home, brought back his gun, opened fire at about 5:30 in the afternoon. Prosecutor Adriana Nastic said that the attacker went to 6 locations during the shooting rampage, including the last one where he then blew himself away. 4 men were killed at the bar. The shooter then moved on to another place where he killed 4 more people, then 2 kids at a third site.
That's horrible.
He went on to kill 2 more people at 2 other locations before committing suicide. Prime Minister Miloško Spajic said that the government may try to impose a total ban on weapons because
Red alert.
Ask ourselves after this, who should be allowed to have guns in Montenegro, the small nation on the Adriatic Sea, which is a population of 620,000 people, is known for its gun culture, and many people traditionally have weapons. If they're known for it, it was not known by me until just now.
Yeah, it wasn't known by me either, but red alert, Ted, like if I don't know their laws, obviously, like Montenegro, I don't know, NATO member, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Former
all I know
Yugoslavian
is
Republic.
Right. All I know is they're a more recent-ish NATO member, and I guess if they have a Second Amendment type thing in their laws where, they're around 500 million people they have in their country because it's teeny tiny. If all these people have guns, like suddenly now they're like, oh, it's another mass shooting. It's a mass shooting. We got to take guns away.
That's what they did in New Zealand, right?
That's all. I mean, that's all I'm saying. It's just you hear this. It's a trope at this point where it's like, mass shooting.
It's a trope. It's also true that like we have
mass shooting.
There's a lot of mass shootings. So I mean, it's both a trope and it's also like we have a lot of people shooting up schools and I guess in this case bars and churches. So it's not unreasonable for society to say maybe we don't really need guns. I mean, most people don't have guns in the U.S., for example. So people who don't have guns are like, I live without a gun, so maybe that shouldn't be guaranteed. By the way, I'm pro Second Amendment. I'm not that person, but it's sort of like I do think that being anti-gun is a completely legitimate point of view. It's not like you're pulling it out of your ass. It's like guns are dangerous. I mean, there's no question about it.
Guns are dangerous in the wrong hands.
Right. And there's a lot of wrong hands.
That's all I'll say.
I'm just saying that people who want to get rid of them, they're not crazy. I mean, or fascists. It's like, it's just a tough issue.
Well, yeah.
It's like
and guns were also used.
It's like I'm pro-abortion
yesterday.
rights, but I think people who are like, oh, but you're killing a baby in the womb, they're right. You are. I mean, they're not wrong. It's like
that is the actual act.
That's science. Yeah.
That is what abortion is. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Let's move along because I see our guest waiting.
Let's do it.
But
quickly. President Joe Biden is bestowing the second highest civilian medal on Liz Cheney.
What the hell?
And Benny Thompson, who are leaders of the congressional investigation into the Capitol riot, who Trump said should both be jailed for their roles in the inquiry. Biden will award the Presidential Citizens Medal to 20 people in a ceremony today at the White House, including Americans who fought for marriage equality, a pioneer in treating wounded soldiers, and two of the president's longtime friends, the Senators Ted Kaufman, Democrat of Delaware, and Chris Dodd, Democrat of
So they're getting them?
Yeah,
they're getting them because they're homies?
Yeah, because they're homies. President Biden believes these Americans are bonded by their common decency. And Liz Cheney, common decency? She gay-bashed her own sister and commitment to serving others, the White House said in a statement. The country is better because of their dedication and sacrifice. Not because of Liz Cheney. Biden last year honored people who were involved in defending the Capitol from a mob of angry Trump supporters on J6, or who helped safeguard the will of American voters during the election when Trump tried and failed to overturn the election results. Cheney, former Wyoming Congresswoman, and Thompson, a Mississippi Democrat, led the House committee that investigated the insurrection. The report of that committee said that Trump criminally engaged in a multi-part conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. We know all this. Cheney later said that she would vote for Kamala in the 2024 race and campaigned with her, raising Trump's ire, and I would say the ire of millions of Democrats as well.
Yes.
Biden has been considering whether to offer preemptive pardons to Cheney and others Trump has targeted. Cheney probably needs a pardon more for tanking, personally, single-handedly destroying Kamala Harris's candidacy. Literally, by itself, it cost her the White House. But 19 million people who voted for Biden in 2020 did not vote for her in 2024. She lost by 2 million votes. Are you going to tell me that 2 million or more out of those 19 million people weren't people who were like, Liz Cheney? Blah. No.
Yeah, like, what the hell? Like, what is a preemptive pardon? Is that even like possible within presidential powers.
Yeah,
and
it is.
and
It's
a
totally.
pre-pardon for what? Like, what does that even mean?
It's not like,
and you're going to
it's
give her
not
a
like
citizen's
you can't
award?
be pardoned for your future
Hell?
crimes. So you can't. So like a president can't say, "I'm going to pardon you for, let's say you
for
decide
everything. You get carte blanche until 2050.
Yeah, you're good. It's awesome. But what they can do is say, like, let's say, let's say you allegedly committed a crime last year. Like, I don't know, maybe you killed someone. The president could then say, I will pardon you for any killings you committed last year. And then if you're charged by the cops next year, you're like, I've got this pardon. That was last. Right. I was so the crime has to be in the past, or the alleged crime.
So he's just going to give a time frame like he did for Hunter, for Liz, because her former colleagues want to indict her for witness tampering.
Yep.
So
which it looks like she's guilty of, frankly.
Yeah, he may actually do this for her while also giving her this Presidential Medal of Freedom or whatever she's getting. Like, this is insane.
Yeah, 2 more headlines. 2 more.
Insane.
Pregnant New Yorkers will be entitled to at least 20 hours of paid leave to attend.
20 whole hours?
To attend prenatal medical appointments under a law that took effect Wednesday. Well, in fairness, I mean, how many hours? I mean, you had a kid fairly recently.
This
is just for the medical appointments. I mean, you just need like a few hours to do one,
but
right?
not actually for like paid maternity leave.
Governor Hochul says the policy makes New York the first state in the country to offer paid leave for prenatal care. All pregnant workers in the private sector are eligible for paid time off. Workers can schedule the paid leave for pregnancy-related medical appointments like physicals, end of pregnancy care, and fertility treatments, among other things. Now, if you have fertility treatments, you're going to need a lot more than 20 hours. Hochul pushed for the measure in the state's last legislative session as a way to help reduce maternal and infant deaths in New York. Employers are forbidden from requesting medical information whenever a worker requests the prenatal paid leave. The policy is separate from any other paid sick leave offered by an employer. Spouses of pregnant women are not eligible for the prenatal leave. All right, so there you go.
Oh, well, so they can't accompany them is what they're saying.
Right.
But,
all right. I mean, it's not that generous.
It's a step in the right direction.
It is a baby step.
I misread that. I misread what it was, but okay, that's good.
It's a baby step, but we have a long way to go until we reach.
And paid maternity leave needs to become an actual thing all across this country. That's my position on this.
Of course, obviously.
Like, and
like
we
all
have
civilized
dearth.
Countries have.
Yes, we have a freaking dearth of babies being born in this country. Part of that reason is because we do not have the right the right civil infrastructure in place to help women, especially working women, take that time off to have babies, to go to their doctors, to do.
Well, there's no daycare. I mean,
there's no day. Right, the whole thing from like conception to after mom needs to go back to work. Where does the baby go? We don't have that.
Having a baby is a pain in the ass in this country. For sure.
Right. They make it a pain in the ass. Whereas, let me just compare this to Russia. I mean, for obvious reasons, I have like very, like expanded knowledge from as compared to the most people or the general public. My friends, when I worked at RT, so I was grateful to have 12 weeks of paid maternity leave. Right. And I had bosses that were really cool about me going to the doctors or whatever. They were, they never dinged me on that, unless it, really greatly took up most of the day. But most of the time they were cool with that. I had 12 weeks. That was very generous because there was no law at this point in 2018, federal law that's going to force American employers to allow women to have the babies and then be paid and guarantee our jobs are still there when we return and whatever. But then I found out my other friends who are Russians that did not work for RT America, they worked for RT proper, but were based in DC. They got 1 full year of maternity leave, Ted.
Mm-hmm.
Full year.
Frankly, I don't think that's that much, really.
And they got a whole, like, their
Also,
whole
those
paychecks
countries
for,
usually have paternity leave as well too.
right. They got like
We
X
should
amount of
move
time,
on,
and
unfortunately.
then less as the year goes by. And then, so that's just comparing them to us. And then we're worried about our freaking, our population.
Our last one.
So,
Advanced AI models score well on professional medical exams, but still flunk one of the most crucial physician tasks, talking with patients to gather relevant medical info and deliver an accurate diagnosis. While large language models show impressive results on multiple choice tests, their accuracy drops significantly in dynamic conversations. Duh, said Pranaj Rajpurkar at Harvard. The models particularly struggle with open-ended diagnostic reasoning. Yeah, anyone who's ever dealt with AI knows this. That became evident when researchers developed a method for evaluating an AI model's reasoning capabilities based on simulated doctor-patient convos. The quote-unquote patients were based on 2,000 actual medical cases, primarily drawn from professional medical board exams. Simulating patient interactions enables the evaluation of medical history-taking skills, a critical component of clinical practice that can't be assessed using case vignettes. That, according to Shreya Yori, also at Harvard, the new evaluation benchmark called CraftMD also mirrors real-life scenarios where patients may not know which details are crucial to share and might only disclose important information when prompted by specific questions. The CraftMD benchmark itself relies on AI. OpenAI's GPT-4 model played the role of a patient AI in a conversation with the clinical AI being tested. AIs judging AIs. Multiple experiments showed that 4 leading large language models performed considerably worse on the convo-based benchmark than they did when making diagnoses based on written summaries of the cases. The models also failed to gather complete medical histories on a significant proportion of the time, and that led the model GPT-4 only doing so 71% of the time. Even when the AI models did gather the relevant medical history, they didn't always produce the right diagnosis. If an AI model eventually passes this benchmark, consistently making, accurate diagnoses based on simulated patient conversations, this would not necessarily make it superior to human physicians, says Rajpurkar. He points out that medical practice in the real world is messier than in simulations. It involves managing multiple patients, coordinating with healthcare teams, performing physical exams, and understanding complex social and systemic factors in local healthcare situations. This shit is not ready for prime time. And I don't know why they're pretending like it is. And it's not going to be anytime soon. Sorry.
No. Please do not. I am not.
Look at the cars. Look at the self-driving taxis in San Francisco. They're always hitting
I am not doing this.
Traffic. They don't know what they're doing.
I am not doing this right here. You see that on the screen right there? This right there? I'm not doing some fake. I'm not going to talk to some fake AI.
Hello, I am Doc Bot. I love you.
Like, I'm not going to talk to her for her to diagnose me and have it be wrong anyways. But I'm also curious to see what the human rate of error is, human doctor rate of error.
Oh, well, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm working in the research for my next book. I recently came across a very disturbing statistic. The number 3 cause of death in the United States is medical mistakes.
Number 3?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Ooh. Yikes, man. So
doctors do fuck up a lot.
Of course.
It's sort of like regular, the self-driving
car. But are they worse than
regular drivers
AI?
Fuck up, and they do. But it's like,
yeah.
But I mean, I gotta say, I just think the AI is it's not ready. It's like, it doesn't have enough. It doesn't have enough variables programmed into it in order to be able to be reliable.
From conversation is what this study so far.
Well, let's just say you had an AI plane, right? Could AI have done the miracle on the Hudson better than Sully? I don't think so.
Oh, I don't think so. No.
I mean, that was specific to his experience. He had flown out of LaGuardia a bunch of times. He had observed that there were a lot of birds. He had given a lot of thought to what he would do if there was a bird strike, and he'd gamed it out in his mind that he would land on the Hudson River. Man. So it was, and he
understands like the curve of the belly of the plane and like what he could do. He knows the Hudson River, right? Like
he knows where the bridges
lives
are.
There.
Yeah, he knows where the bridges are. I mean, the AI wouldn't necessarily know all that.
Right. So there you go. We're not ready. We're miles away from having AI, Dr. AI. So like, please God,
It'll happen
no.
someday, and at someday
Oh,
it'll probably be really good. But it's just not. We're not there.
Not now. Not now. Not now. Not now. All right. That was the last one. All right.
That's the last one.
So
Jaws.
with that, yeah, we are so not ready for yuck. Ugh, crazy. All right. We are gonna switch gears and bring in our guest without further ado. I'm gonna switch gears.
All right.
So back to the.
Shall I intro him, or do you want to do it?
Sure. Back to the first headline. That's what our talk topic is.
A driver has, and if you're just joining us, a driver has run down and killed 15 pedestrians on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. Many more have been injured. A man pushes a commuter in front of a New York City subway train here at 18th Street in Manhattan after a migrant sets a homeless woman on fire, killing her on a train in Brooklyn. The FBI is currently saying that crime is down in every category, especially violent crimes, but urban areas feel lawless and out of control. And the latest Gallup poll finds that a majority of Americans think that crime is extremely or very serious. Are we paranoid? What effects are the migrant and homeless crises having on the problem? And what can the authorities do at the local and national level to make us feel safer? Joining us is Michael Maloof, former senior Pentagon policy analyst with expertise in terrorism. And you can follow his Rumble channel at official Michael Maloof, Maloof. Michael, thanks for joining us again here.
Thanks for having me. Happy New Year, you guys.
You too.
Happy New Year. I was joking with Mike yesterday when I asked him to be on the show. Is that Ted? You don't know this because it's an inside joke, but wherever blood is spilled in mass quantity and mass amounts, you got to bring in Mike Maloof.
I don't know if that's really a joke. It's
just
an observation, maybe.
That's where his expertise is, right? So it's weird to have that kind of expertise, Mike, but you understand terrorism, you understand security and risk and all of that stuff. So let's first talk about what happened in New Orleans. I put a theory out there because we don't know all the details yet about this guy. He appears to be, 42-year-old Black Muslim man, American Black Muslim man, born and raised in Texas. Don't know if he's a lone wolf. They're potentially connecting him to the Cybertruck thing in Las Vegas. Don't know. We don't know any of that yet. But they say he was flying an ISIS flag. They say he was self-radicalized over the last two short years. How does this happen? And barring, the FBI kind of honeypotting people and making them turning them radicalized. If this is self-radicalization, I mean, is it homegrown terror? Is this something we should pay attention to more?
Well, thanks for having me on. I think it's a combination of all the above. I think you've got this guy in New Orleans, it seems, based upon the information we now have available, I should say, appears to have been self-radicalized. What's significant is that we have not heard from ISIS HQ taking credit. Mm-hmm. Normally they do, but in this case they're silent. He may have just taken it upon himself. We don't know. As far as relating to the New Orleans or to the Las Vegas matter, I see a number of things here. It may or may not be related. Coincidentally, they both were military guys, former military guys, yeah. U.S. military, U.S. citizens, both. They both appear to have been suicides. And the one in Las Vegas appears to be more politically oriented to send a message to Trump and Musk.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Is that necessarily related, even though they both went through the same car rental service? I understand from talking to others who are more familiar with that, that's a very popular car rental service. You can rent exotic cars and at exorbitant prices if you like. I knew nothing about it until I heard about this. That may be just coincidental, or there might be something related to it. We don't have the facts on that either.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more we need to learn first to understand what's happening. The fact that they all happen on 1 January suggests that people are taking advantage of vulnerabilities that we have. They've seen the laxity of this administration on the border, laxity of police in enforcing crime, and they think they can get away with it. Now, related to the New Orleans is our tapes that they have, or videos of 3-4 people at least setting up IEDs. Is this a cell? Are they just part of a larger group that have been not only radicalized, but actually maybe foreign players? We know nothing about their pedigree, and and we don't even know that it's just limited to 4 or 5 people. It could be an entire national cell, that for all I know. We just don't know. The FBI should be on top of this thing, and it does constitute domestic terrorism. What is terrorism? Well, you're terrorized if someone's coming at you with a few ton car directly. That's a weapon, and that terrorizes you. Terrorism is if you use violence for political ends, and under the current definition, if it's from foreign-based sources. Well, terrorism to me has been expanded to be both domestic and foreign in terms of its pedigree. So it looks like that because we don't have the enforcement that we were spoiled during the previous Trump administration, I think they feel they can get away with it. Look, even Christopher Wray, the current FBI director, has warned that he's never seen the warning signs so visible as now. And I'm sure they're all blinking red, all those warning signs. And we've allowed 338 known terrorists to come in under the Biden administration. I think it was 11 total during the Trump administration.
Have we met our quota yet?
Well, we don't know. What about the gotaways?
Biden's quota.
We have gotaways. We have no clue as to how many there were, and it could be in the hundreds of thousands for all we know. So we basically set ourselves up for failure.
So I thought we defeated ISIS, Mike.
Well, you're always going to have these elements come up. Look at HTS in Syria. It's they're an offshoot of ISIS. They're trying to claim legitimacy by acting somewhat civil, but they can turn on you at any time. I doubt that Jelani, who heads it now, will last all that much longer. If they're because you're going to have these other factions, these other militias within Syria that may have their own notions of what they want. I don't know that they'll be able to set up a centralized government. You have ISIS now resurrecting itself in Afghanistan once again. You have ISIS that is percolating once again in Syria, and the one thing that did not exist in 2014 when ISIS first created the caliphate between Syria and Iraq was that you now have the Popular Mobilization Forces of the Shia in Iraq that could counter any ability by ISIS to resurrect itself to that extent. But now that Syria has been taken over by all of these Sunni Islamist groups, it's just we're all holding our breath to see if they can become much more within the mainstream of governance and international recognition. You have Taliban that's also Sunni. They are They were considered a terrorist group. We still formally regard them, but the reality is who governs what? The reality is that they govern Afghanistan today, and even Russia has over time accepted them, even though they're really cracking down on women's rights, minority rights. Minority rights don't even exist in Afghanistan. And the concern is for minority rights in Syria as well. Under Assad, that was a secular government. It was, even though he had an Alawite or an offshoot of Shiaism as a religion, but he ran a secular government. It's different here. It's different in Syria today. Now, this may be an opportunity by Islamists to, particularly ISIS-like types, to start coming to the fore once again. We just don't know yet. But this guy seems to have, the New Orleans guy seems to have been, what do you call it? Converted, if you will, like a number of others have been in the past. He's not from another country. He's a born American.
An American radicalized at home, because so far they haven't seen that he traveled anywhere.
His military background does not lend itself to any knowledge or know-how of bomb making or any. He was
82nd Airborne.
He was HR. He was in the HR department, IT. Yeah, I mean, that's not. You don't get the kind of IED training that you would if you were directly involved in that. So I think we need more information, but I think it has put our services, our in law enforcement and our intelligence services on notice that the reality is that terrorism is not over. We basically ushered it to the back row of the bus in light of everything else, and we haven't given it the prominence that we wanted. But allowing that border to remain open for 4 years, we just invited this kind of not only radicalization, but also the potential for more domestic attacks.
Although, Michael, I mean, isn't that like more theoretical? I mean, these, at least in the context of these two incidents, and particularly the one in New Orleans, as we talked about, this is an American citizen, right? The border policy has nothing to do with this at all. We should have. I mean, this is an American who served in the military. Therefore, we would expect to be less likely to do something like that.
Well, I think in one respect, I think it's related because it shows the laxity of policymakers over the last 4 years, and allowed him to go ahead and take advantage of not only being radicalized, but also and affiliating himself with that. But it is allowing now domestic groups to come in. I mean, 4 years ago, we did not have the Venezuelan criminal gangs in here. DEA says the cartels have settled in 13 U.S. states, 5 of which are distribution hubs. Why would we allow that kind of activity, knowing what these cartels can do in terms? I mean, and they're all part. They all work together.
Well, I mean, come on. ISIS doesn't have anything to do at all with drug cartels, right? I mean,
I disagree.
Okay, tell.
We have seen in the past terrorist groups out of Latin America associating with the cartels because of their distribution networks, and it could be ISIS. What?
I have heard that.
But ISIS is they what they do is they send out they're like a virus. It's like a mind virus. They're sending out ideas over the internet primarily, and people, like, for example, the Fort Hood shooter, they get these ideas. They are radicalized. They're angry about what the U.S. is doing in places like the Middle East to their brother and sister Muslims. So they get angry and they're told, you have to go and be a resistance fighter and do something, carry out an attack like last night. And so that's, I mean, I don't know how traditional counterterrorism can take that on. because this is literally, it's the embodiment of
Well-
that cliche that you can't kill an idea. The only way you can kill an idea is to suck out the inspiration for that idea. Let's say the U.S. were to pull out of the Middle East, for example, then that would probably put
Well, you can. If we had better monitoring, for example, of this New Orleans guy's social media, as the FBI is supposed to be doing, they would have picked up the signals.
Yeah, they said
Apparently they
he
did.
was on their radar.
Yeah, he was.
I don't know.
So, he was a known entity. So why didn't they act? Why didn't they go and question him? Why didn't they put him on notice? We're watching you. Why didn't they do that?
That's a good question. That's a valid question.
We have a viewer question for you.
Mhm.
Viewer wants to know, why doesn't a place like Bourbon Street, why isn't it basically the viewer wants to know why Bourbon Street, in terms of like protecting innocent civilian life, why wasn't Bourbon Street just simply closed off, at least for, the New Year's Eve celebration? Like you put up some, actual barriers all around, from one end. It's one street, right? So they can literally just close off, put up barriers from one end to the other, call it a night, and that's it. It's a special event. Why didn't the city take better preventative measures?
I was just there in Thanksgiving week, and they were working on replacing the Jersey barriers that they had blocking Bourbon Street with bollards that can be pushed up and down like mechanically, like we have them here in the financial district in New York City. Times Square has them, and so they can push them down so that, for example, emergency vehicles can get in, or maintenance vehicles, and then they close them back up. So they were working on them. It's not.
But
like
I mean,
they didn't
since
have them.
in lieu of those, why didn't they just put up those concrete barriers like we have on the side of the freeway?
Those are Jersey barriers, and they
Well,
did.
it's my understanding.
I thought we were talking about the baller. Oh, sorry, yeah. But why
It's
didn't they
my
put new ones up
understanding
there?
that New York has had experience in this. I don't find that a valid excuse. They're switching to bollards. New York, they've lined up front to back garbage trucks to block, literally to block. The sidewalk was not blocked in New Orleans, and there was a single police car. Big deal. They just underestimated, and they did not assume the worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
They became lax in their security. It's very clear to me.
Yeah.
And I think that now you're going to see more in lieu of these bollards and things. You're going to probably see a cascade of heavy duty trucks being lined up, even buses, just a block. And that's a physical barrier. That is a valid physical barrier. He would not have been able to get through.
Mike, like
now,
here,
how do you get around that? Drones. Watch out for drones.
Oh.
Or you can just come in as a pedestrian, right, with weapons and bombs.
Well,
No, not if you have screening.
Right.
Watch out for the drones. The weaponized drones are going to be the next factor that we're not prepared for. That's why I'm a little leery of the Sugar Bowl now, because
I was just going to ask. Yes. What do you think about the safety measures? I mean, they pushed it off for a day. Is a day enough time for them to ramp up safety precautions because they don't know if the threat is over?
No, they don't. And the only way you're going to do that is ensure that there's adequate jamming around the stadium at the time to knock out any signals.
Like the Russians use in Ukraine.
Well, when I was in Kazan in Russia in October, I had a very difficult time hooking up, like with Jamaro and people like that from Kazan, and because of the jamming, due to the presence of world leaders. There were some 40 world leaders, and there was constant electronic jamming for fear that there would be drone attacks in Kazan. Well, what happened just last month in December? There was a drone attack in where? Kazan.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it would happen just a few weeks after I was there. So that is a possibility. The Ukrainians have that drone capability, even though it was 800 miles away from Ukraine to Kazan. But yet the reality is that is a clear threat. And I'm concerned now in light of what has of what seems, and you got to be concerned about copycats now of that stadium and mass pop and mass
casualty, man. This will be
Matt, where you have mass people coming together like at stadiums and mass events, that a swarm drone attack would be the key. And you know, this, you know, you can put up hundreds of drones to do all of this configuration in the sky. Well, why not arm them? They could be armed.
Well, what happened to the drone story from what, 2 weeks ago, Ted? These drones all over New Jersey and the East, like that story's gone. That story's gone though, but the story's gone.
Though they're still around. I mean, the thing is, that isn't counterterrorism of this kind pretty much like an impossible task, right? It's whack-a-mole.
No.
Because, well, let me just finish my thought. So, for example, who would have ever suspected that the Oklahoma City Federal Building would be a major target of attack, or that timber company executives would get package bombs from the Unabomber? I mean, it's just like these are, I mean, we can look at, the big things, the Super Bowl, whatever. But the point is, it's like someone could go after a minor league baseball game. I mean, who knows, right? It's a huge country. There's tons of targets. They're everywhere.
We're always reacting. We're not putting our law enforcement authorities and our intelligence people are not putting themselves in the position of the bad guy, in the minds of the bad guy. They're not thinking, what would I do? They're not thinking out of the box, so to speak, in developing what would be the worst case scenario for a potential attack. You, as someone who's going to try and counter that stuff, that's what you got to do. That's what we used to do in man tracking when we would go up on the borders and train border guards in the Central Asian countries, at least on my watch. And we had to anticipate. Now, if I were a bad guy, what route would I go? Especially if I had lost the tracks or something, but when we were trying to track down terrorists coming into the country. And that's what we would do. And invariably, we hit it almost 90% of the time. You've got to put yourself in their mindset, into their mindset, and not rely solely upon what's happened in the past.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
so would you put
it's a subtle distinction, but it's valid, I think, because you've got to, it's got to be out of the box, and that's what we need to be doing more of. But our government is not conducive to creative thinking.
Well, it probably doesn't hire people who are into creative thinking, or if they are creative, it fires them, right?
Yeah. Well, they don't. They want to discourage it, because if you come up with an idea. And when in my job, I always assumed the worst, and invariably it turned out to be true.
Right. Well, Mike, so whose failure was this? Was it the city planner, like whoever was, the city, like the officials there? Did they fail the citizens of New Orleans and thereby the rest of the country, making it vulnerable to this sort of attack?
Because they all had this same conventional thinking of security, and they were so lax. They didn't they didn't come up with an adequate substitute while during the period of replacement of these bollards for what they were replacing them with, and that was not adequately prepared either, and the guy just went around it.
Yeah, we should
point out on the sidewalk.
When, for example, Bibi Netanyahu comes to DC pretty often, I think we all know that, and he always stays at the Willard. And when he stays at the Willard, because RT America offices were literally steps away from there, I knew whenever a world leader was in town, because they stay there because it's steps away from the White House, and they line up 14th Street or the surrounding streets of the hotel with snowplows all the way around, and there's heavy police presence, and there's just no way in or out unless you're a solo individual. Even a mom pushing a stroller would have a hard time getting through those Jersey barriers. That's because correct. Of the way they stack them. So
wouldn't it also be smart for him not to always stay at the same place?
I know, you would think, but he always stays there.
Might I don't be know smart why, for him not just to show up at all.
There's that too.
Yeah, there's that too. But the point is, the DC officials know how to protect, a cordoned area. versus here's what we saw.
They
in
basically form a seal around the affected area, and that's important. But again, the example of the Willow would be a little more difficult, but in an open space such as a stadium, you have that one additional element now, and that would be the drones. And I think that this is going to be the next stage, especially in open area concentrations of a lot of people. And this is something that really needs to be thought through.
Especially, Mike, given that at a lot of these football games or baseball games, they like to do those big flyovers, right? The military pays the NFL or whatever to do this sort of military recruiting. You'll get the Blue Angels, flying across the top and dazzle the crowd at halftime. They like aerial shows in the middle, in the middle of these games. But now that you bring this point up about exploding drones and stuff like that, and the technology is becoming so cheap, that becomes a real threat. Do we have any structure in place within, I don't know if it's the FBI or maybe local law enforcement that hosts those stadiums? Are they prepared for that? Do you know if there's, have they talked about it?
I don't know for sure. I would hope that they've given it serious thought, because it is with us. I mean, just the example of warfare in Ukraine right now. We see drones, the technology behind a simple drone has revolutionized warfare in that battlefield, and we're seeing it from both the Russian side and the Ukrainian side, and it has really made a difference in terms of that's why the war is still basically going on, because the Ukrainians have come up with drone warfare, and it's been somewhat effective.
While we're on that note, Mike, and I know we didn't bring you on to talk about warfare there, but the fact that Ukraine now does have that capability to fly these drones that have great distance to them to fly into Russia proper, why is the media not calling that terrorism?
Because they have backed this administration, and they think that they're on God's side.
I mean, isn't that terrorism by definition?
Of course. I mean, and it's only because it's hitting civilian areas. The area, for example, in Kazan that was just hit by the Ukrainians was nothing more than a civilian apartment building. I know the area, having been there.
So,
and there was no military target.
So, but that's that's not new, right? I mean, like in World War II, obviously, Vietnam, every war, right?
Well, they claim they're hitting military targets.
But civilian, but we know that civilian apartment blocks burned in Dresden and places like that, and meanwhile,
that was total warfare then in Dresden.
Right. And
yeah, total warfare.
Right. So which means the attack on the civilian population as well. Is that new?
No, but it goes counter to their argument of what they're doing in terms of being surgical and wanting to extend missiles for longer range. Now, and they do have drones now that are more capable than the ATACMS, and which only go 200 miles.
Yeah, it's funny too. Just parenthetically, I just finished reading Philip Short's biography of Vladimir Putin, and he's not a fan of Putin's at all. But he definitely has some really interesting things to say. And maybe my favorite one was toward the end, he's like, if the West keeps saying that this was a land grab by Putin in Ukraine, and he's like, Russia doesn't need land. Russia has lots of land.
No.
It has all the land and more that it knows what to do with. And I just thought that's so simple and brilliant and true.
Yeah.
No, it was not that simple. I mean, we could get into the discussion about the origins of the SMO in Ukraine, but it began back in 2014.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
This is about NATO.
Yeah. So let's bring you guys back stateside about homegrown terror, or and violence in general. Again, I was joking, but kind of not joking. If anybody knows about violence and stuff, it would be Mike Maloof. And Ted was saying in a statistic, in the lead into this, was that supposedly the FBI says violent crime is down in the U.S. as we enter 2025. Are Americans paranoid? I mean, it just seems obviously that it's amplified by media because there's more media, 24/7 media. It's in your pocket. You carry it with you. Carry media with you all day. If you're sitting on the metro, you're looking at media, right? So are we paranoid, or is there?
And you might be staring at your media on the metro while you're about to be pushed onto the tracks
or lit on fire.
Yeah.
Well, this is the problem. It can happen anywhere, anytime. And one of the things we always used to push was situational awareness. When we would be out looking for counter snipers and what have you, it was always where would I hide if I was going to attack in a certain area? And you got to have situational awareness. Mm-hmm. And people, everyday people, need to develop a muscle memory to start doing that, because these kinds of unscheduled developments can occur anytime, anywhere, to anyone. And you want to be able to look out as far as you can in terms of your safety, doing a 360. I mean, you could do it nonchalantly. You don't have to be paranoid about it, but you can be much more aware of your own situation. But when people are out frolicking, having fun, doing Mardi Gras or anything like that, that's the last thing on their minds. I know when we used to travel, let's say in fact, it happened years ago when I was in Paris. There were demonstrations on the street. We always looked for an escape route. How do you get if I come into a place, where would I go? We always try to avoid demonstrations, but they could occur. And one other time when we went to approaching the subway in Paris, the damn thing blew up. Someone had planted a bomb at the Saint Michel metro in Paris. I don't ride subways. I just don't ride subways.
Well, yeah, I agree with that completely, Mike. The phone issue makes everybody like crossing the street vulnerable, like to get hit by cars as you're a pedestrian. Because no one's paying attention. I'm not one of those people. I am constantly like shifty-eyed, looking everywhere, and I look people right in the eye, like, I see you, motherfucker. I see you. And I want them to know.
In terms of driving, you want to do defensive driving. I don't see that in people driving around anymore. They're no longer
nowadays
do a defensive type of driving.
They want their
in other
cars
words, trying to anticipate.
Them.
They need to anticipate what is going to be happening, and you have to ask the question, what if? And we were always doing that. What if something were to happen right now? What would you do? Where would you go? You wanted to keep moving, and where would you move to?
Right.
You're always asking yourselves these questions. It is a purposeful muscle memory thing that you make part of you ultimately as an individual, to try to avoid what happened down in New Orleans, where you just get mowed down by a car. Why would you be walking in the middle of the damn street? We would always never put ourselves in the position of walking in an open space. You're vulnerable.
Yeah.
I remember we used to come back from the mountains after a few weeks, me and my team, and we would come into a hotel in Tashkent, for example, that had sustained a direct blast. And you could see the shrapnel up on the 5th floor. And we invariably would enter the hotel. We wouldn't go down in the middle. It was a big, I still remember, it was a huge open space to go to the registration. We would always walk around the edges. We never went down the middle. The same when you're out in the field. You stay not in the open area. You stay along the tree lines. I mean, it's just common sense, and you develop that over time, and then you apply it to your everyday world, back in the civilian world, and it makes a difference. And people might think, well, you're a little paranoid. Well, no, you're not. You're basically doing what's necessary to stay alive. And I'm sure those 15 people wish they had taken a different route on New Year's.
I don't like big crowds. It's one of the things.
Yeah, I don't either, because you can't escape. And we
No,
saw
but what I'm suggesting is that people need to take more individual responsibility now of situational awareness, more so than they ever have, because of the uncertainty that we live in today.
Of the times, get off your phone.
Get up. Walking with earphones, you won't hear a car coming at you, especially
even if the car loses
an EV.
Yeah, or let's say a car's not attacking you. Let's just say the car is like just out of control and they're honking, like, that can happen.
And you invariably will see people with earphones on, listening to music, totally oblivious to the outside world. It's part of their having insulated themselves from being outward.
To your point, Mike, I don't know if it's a crime statistic per se, Ted, but one statistic that is up in America in every state is car versus pedestrian incidents are way up.
Yeah, that's not surprising, just given the inattentiveness. I mean, the police are saying, and it's not surprising, right? Like they've seen, the accident rate from people who are not paying attention to what they're doing when they're driving is just off the roof, right? That's everything. Everybody's like, I was on my phone, I was texting, blah, 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 always.
Part of it, too, is that authorities do not have an adequate defense against a vehicle being used as a weapon. To me, I was listening to your earlier conversation, Ted. To me, a gun is a tool, and it's
it can be,
but you have it there if you need it,
right?
And if you're trained in it, it becomes second nature to you. And we have to happen. It was so important that even our founding fathers made it the Second Amendment.
I kind of think that I gotta say I'm pro Second Amendment, but I'm also pro driving, and I kind of think. We license drivers. We require that they take driver's ed. I think we should require that, like, say that the NRA safety class, for example, be required for gun owners.
Yeah, but driving is a privilege. Driving is a privilege. Owning a firearm is a right.
A constitutional right. That's true.
Right.
But still,
through regulations, we now require, if you want to get a license, or even if you want to go on the range, in many cases, the ranges will require, first of all, that if you're signing up for a range, that you know how to use that gun. Invariably, you'll have people who own a gun but don't know how to use it.
I've gone to the range a number of times, and
it's a liability issue.
I've never been asked like anything. It's just go over there.
Yeah. Mike is the man to talk to about, all this safety stuff. Like I said, like I hadn't even thought about some of this stuff. Like, I don't like going to these stadiums and stuff anymore. And I don't know if it's because, 20 years of being a reporter and you start getting paranoid and you notice these things that happen, or if this is real, right? Like that America is becoming more violent. We're both becoming, it's two things. We're both becoming bigger mass, like soft targets all the time. We're soft targets 24/7 because everyone's look at their phone or walking around with iPads in front of their whole face, which is crazy. And then we're also, but those iPads and iPhones are making us more short-tempered. And so then people snap, and then it's just this perfect shitstorm of our society kind of going to shit and killing each other over stupid things in road rage, or, you took my parking spot or whatever. It's just this perfect storm of like every shortcoming of American society that you can imagine all rolled into one recently. And therefore now we all think, okay, we should be worried that we're just a walking soft target for road rage or, an ISIS guy.
Okay, now you're making the argument, my previous argument, of why individuals now need to develop greater situational awareness at the individual level. And that's really important. I'm not saying that as criticism, but as something that needs to be done in this complex society that we live in, because we are soft targets. You're absolutely right. But to deal with that, at your level, you've got to have that situation where you have to anticipate. Again, you ask the question, what if this were to happen? What would I do? Rather than just going blindly and thinking about what am I going to have for dinner tonight while I'm driving, you know.
But people are not going to do that. It's a type of
People
it's a
don't.
personality.
Well, then they're going to die.
Well, I'm like that. I walk onto the plane. I always like game out like where the emergency exits
Me too.
are. I walk into a movie theater. I look at the fire exits. I'm like, how would I get there?
I know where everything is.
I know most people don't do that, and they just don't.
Yeah.
It's just like it's a personality thing.
And here's the thing, guys, is that like because Americans as a culture have sort of given up on being aware, being self-aware, being situational awareness, just that's all gone out the window, right? We've relinquished that to the government and have allowed, this is how the Patriot Act continues to grow. Every fucking year there becomes new bills tacked on to the Patriot Act because we won't take care of ourselves. We are allowing the government to further dig into our personal lives, see everything. I mean, what Ed Snowden revealed is how much the government knows about us, right? And our metadata and all that stuff on the phone.
A lot more now. That was 2013. And his info was out of date then.
Right. The Patriot Act continues to grow every single year. And that just gets funded again and again and again. And it never gets sunsetted. They never relinquish that power because Americans have because of stuff like Mike was saying, we don't take care of ourselves. We don't care to look around before we cross the street. So here comes Big Daddy government going, don't worry about it. I'll take care of you. I'll expand the Patriot Act. I'll make sure you have a protection drone flying over you 24/7. Don't worry. It's not watching everything you're doing and doing. If you're not doing bad things, don't worry about it. That's what happens when Americans stop, or humans stop taking care of their damn selves. You relinquish this safety to the government. And in the US, they use it as a tool.
We need to take more personal responsibility, unlike before, because we're just assuming that if you're crossing the street, for example, they'll stop for me. No, don't assume that. What does assume spell out? That which makes an ass out of you and me. Okay? Yes. Don't assume nothing.
All right.
Yes.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Seems like a good place to wrap it up.
That is the perfect ending. That's right. That's exactly where we are. So yeah, take that from a security expert, our friend Michael Maloof. He is a former senior Pentagon policy analyst with expertise in security and terrorism and all of that. Make sure you guys go check out his Rumble channel. You can all go follow it there at official Michael Maloof. Maloof. You see his name there at the bottom of the screen. Go check out his channel. Go support that one as well. Go click follow over there. Mike, always appreciate your expertise in this stuff. It's mind-boggling how much you know about security and terrorism. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure.
Happy New Year.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Happy New Year.
Bye, Mike. Thank you. All right, so that is going to do it for us because, geez, Ted, this whole conversation about lawlessness and all of that stuff that you and I were talking about, off camera is people just don't give a shit anymore. They don't give a shit about their own safety. They don't give a shit about laws.
They care about their safety. Don't give a shit. They're just distracted.
But they don't do anything about it. I don't. You can't tell me you care about your own safety if you don't act on it,
I think psychology is far more complicated than that. I think people are addicted to their devices, and addiction.
I am not. I lose my phone all the time.
Addiction is bad. I mean, addiction makes people do things that they know are not good for them, and that's why it's an addiction. They know they ought not to be doing it, but they do it anyway. That's what an addiction is.
I'm like the opposite of somebody that needs a digital detox.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The exception proves the rule, right? I mean, most people, these things are designed to be addictive, and they are for most people.
They are, right. Like me, I'm, like I said, I'm as analog as I can be. You know, like I have no interest in actually like being in front of my computer if I don't have to. I don't have any interest in keeping my phone in front of my face. I am constantly losing my phone in the house. Like, where did I put it? Is it in the bathroom? That's really like the only time I use it. So just saying.
In the bathroom?
Yeah.
I'll bear that in mind next time we talk.
Well, because look, back in the day, I used to read like Nat Geo, you know, the magazine thing in the bathroom, like or whatever. But like, I have Nat Geo here, so why would why would I do that? Wall Street Journal, right there. So anyway, that's going to do it for us on our first show of 2025. Our Friday show. Here's your opportunity to shoot us any question. Ted and I will try to answer. TMI Show question, singular, at yahoo.com. Send us an audio message. It doesn't need to show your face. You don't even need to tell us your real name. Be like Vintage Lefty. Send us a good audio question, about a minute long, and you will be part of the show. We'll pop it in there, and we will try to the best of our ability to answer it. So there it is, guys. Happy New Year 2025. I'm going to say buckle up. The gloves came off. The hatchet's coming through the door. And get prepared to run buck ass naked out into the snow because that's the only way you're going to survive. 2025.
If there's any snow, which there might not be, but anyway.
Predictions, Ted, real quick. What's your prediction? That's what I think 2025 is going to to look like.
Honestly, I literally don't have a clue.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just like it's totally like,
really?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can argue this either way, like, for example, about what Trump's planning to do, how effective he'll be, but I can argue it all over the place. I just don't know.
Yeah, I think the hatchet's coming through the door.
All right.
That's all I'm saying.
All right,
all right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy brand new year 2025. We wish you all the best that the year can offer, all the health. I know I need that. Health, wealth, prosperity for 2025. And I'll do this again on January 29th. I don't know if that's one of the days we're streaming, Ted. You know what J29 is?
Nope.
Chinese New Year! Lunar New Year!
All right. It changes every year, right?
It changed, yeah, because it's a lunar calendar. So,
yeah, I don't understand
ours
that.
is so much cooler than Gregorian calendar because we actually have like actual like traditions where like there's red envelopes, there's food, there's like what is Gregorian J1? Like what do you do?
Nothing.
What's with food?
You just sit around.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So all right,
guys. It's a boring day.
It is a boring day, but it's a day off from work. So
that's all.
So there you have it.
Part of why.
All right, guys. Thanks for being here. 10 and I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern. Adios, amigos. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.